People who take massive war crime level dumps in public bathrooms but don't flush. Why?
I used to be a missile officer in the Air Force. A couple hundred times, 392 to be exact, in the mid-2000s, I went out to remote sites and commanded nuclear missiles, etc. Anyway, those remote sites had underground capsules replete with toilets. Some of those toilets didn't work too well on the solids. So, some of my compatriots developed a poop knife, i.e., a butter knife stolen from the site's kitchen tied tape to a plunger handle. We used the poop knife for months, maybe years. Can't remember exactly, but it cut a lot of shit down to size. Unfortunately, towards the end of my career going to those sites, that fucking gross knife disappeared, and it was theorized that it went back into kitchen rotation. If I had to guess, it was a departing officer's way of saying fuck you to some pretty frustrating, stressful duty. Everybody was wary of every butter knife for months. Next story, one time I was in a really crowded airport bathroom and had to pee after this long flight. I ran into the bathroom and every stall had a long line. Coming out of it except for one stall. I took my chances and chose the stall without a line. There was a shit mess everywhere. I really had to pee, so I aimed where the toilet was hiding underneath all the poop. As I'm peeing, a line starts to form outside the stall because the next people in line now think the toilet is usable. I start freaking out because they are going to think I'm the one who left all the poop. I finished peeing, opened the door, and shouted, "I didn't do that. It was like that when I got here." I heard the next guy in line start swearing when he saw what was in the stall. I walked away with the idea that at least it's an airport states, away from where I live, and hopefully nobody will ever recognize me. Next story. This is the story about my war crime shit. I was pooping in a stall at Union Station in Los Angeles. It was one of those legs to the wall. I can feel the separate layers within my intestines all being vacated type shits. It was totally thorough. I'm in a stall near the entrance to the public restroom. I can hear the footsteps and the comments of everyone as they enter. A boy and his father walk in. "It smells like poopy in here, Daddy," or something along those lines. A few moments later, a old voice yells from a stall to my left, "God damn! Prison rules, motherfucker. Give us a courtesy flush on that shit." And at this point, I'm trying not to laugh. This shit has been a non-stop experience. My anus is open, and I'm like a soft-serve ice cream machine down there, man. When it's time to wipe, I barely have enough room to drop in the TP. I left and never looked. Back. Next story.
My office at my old work was directly across from the toilet. There were 6 of us in that building, and it didn't take long to figure out who our terrorist shitter was, because she came in at 8 and was in the bathroom by 8:30 without fail. At about 8:40, rolling stink clouds would permeate the complex, my office being hit the worst, but honestly, it smelled so bad everyone was near to being poisoned on a daily basis. Paint peeled, plants withered and died in the wake of the gas cloud. She ate a great deal of fried food and drank nothing but coffee and soda, at least while at work. I took to closing my office door at about 8:20 and took to rolling up a blanket to block the space between the bottom of the door, and it seemed to help at least keep the air breathable without the aid of gas masks. Other tricks we tried were putting a box of matches in each of the offices so we could strike them to cover up the stench, but those got taken away by management. I suppose they feared we'd burn the place down after being blinded by the stench, and dabbing Vicks under our noses. It was truly the worst shits I'd ever smelled, and I don't know why she couldn't retrain her bowels to erupt earlier before she left for work. Her husband probably threatened her with divorce if she didn't find someplace else to poop. Next story. When my daughter was about 5 years old, she struggled a bit with constipation. It happens a lot when kids start school because they have to change their bathroom schedule to conform to their school schedule. Also, most kids will do everything they can to avoid pooping away from home. Anyway, our pediatrician recommended giving her several small doses of Miralax during a long weekend when she had a Monday off from school. Not enough to cause an explosive blowout, just enough to really get the poop moving. After 3 days of Miralax doses, she said she had to poop. She situated herself on the toilet with a book to read. About 10 minutes later, she called for me and said she needed help. I thought she needed help wiping, so of course I went in. She didn't need help wiping yet. She wasn't done pooping yet. Not even close. She was sitting on the little garbage can, still pooping. Of course I asked her why she was pooping in the garbage can. She said because there's no more room in the toilet. I looked, and sure enough, there was a pile of poop almost as wide as the toilet bowl and almost as high as the toilet seat. And The trash can was almost full too. It looked like giant servings of soft-serve chocolate ice cream. Fortunately, after a few more minutes, she was finally empty. I ended up using one of their plastic sandbox shovels to transfer some poop from the toilet to a plastic bag so I could flush the remaining poop. I then squeezed the poop from the bag into the toilet and flushed. Then I shoveled out the trash can and flushed that poop. I put the shovel and trash can in a garbage bag and put them in the big trash can. I had had my fill of poop by then. I absolutely would have never believed an adult body could hold that much crap, much less a 5-year-old. Seriously, I don't know how she wasn't sick because of it. Parenting is not for the faint of heart. Next story, I stopped at a GA rest stop and had to go. It could not wait. 6-7, toilets were clogged with multiple shits and/or had shit all over the seat. So I used the only toilet remaining to take a massive been on a road trip eating fast food for 3 days shit. It wasn't until I had wiped and stood up that I realized there was no way to flush it. The toilet had been broken the whole time. It was clear to me that my mountain of shame, piled some distance out of the water, would remain present for the next visitor. Embarrassed, I hastily washed my hands and left the scene of the crime, hoping nobody would notice. But as I turned the corner, I watched as someone entered from the other side, opened the stall I was just in, and shouted, "Oh, fucking gross." I couldn't disagree, but I wasn't about to stick around to explain things. I hopped in my car and never looked back. C'est la guerre. Next story, when we were in Greece, I took a massive shit at a restaurant in the middle of nowhere. There was a sign when I walked in that appeared to show a person wipe their ass and then put it in the garbage. I thought nothing of it until the bowl wouldn't flush and realized the sign was literally telling me to wipe my ass and put the paper in the garbage. Anyway, the bus beeped its horn twice, and I knew if I wasn't on that bus, they were leaving me. So there I am staring at this massive turd and a pile of shitty paper not flushing. So I said, fuck it. I live thousands of miles away from here and need to get on that bus. So I basically sprinted from the restroom and paraphrasingly yelled, "Sorry I took a shit and didn't throw my TP away, I'm American." And they just nodded and said safe travels, like Americans showing up and taking massive shits to just up and leave was normal. It was in that moment I truly understood where the USA stood in the world. Crazy times. Next story, I was on a road trip with a couple friends a few years ago and ended up going into a moderately busy chain buffet type restaurant to eat lunch. We are Canadian, and this took place in the USA in the middle of summer. Along the way, I discovered a flavor of blue Gatorade we did not have in Canada that I loved, and I had been chugging those bad boys as I have a condition that causes me to get dehydrated easily. This becomes important. While at dinner, I feel that rumble in my gut that tells me it's almost business time, so I head to the bathroom. It's very nice and clean, and I had my choice of about half a dozen stalls to do drop this deuce off. I do so without incident. I finish up doing my thing, and as I stand over the toilet, I notice that what I had left behind was not only a beast, but almost neon blue from this exotic foreign Gatorade. Pretty cool, but not something I would think somebody else wanted to see. The toilet, however, had other plans. I tried to flush the toilet, and nothing happened. I try again and again, and this toilet has decided to go on strike. I'm not this. Toilet's union rep, so I'm in no place to negotiate. The washroom is empty at the time, so I decide I have to just leave it. I depart the stall and walk over to wash my hands in the sink. As I'm washing my hands, another gentleman enters the room. Just as I'm turning to leave the room, I noticed that of all the urinals and toilet stalls he could choose from, he walked right into the one I just defouled with what looked like a sentient blue alien deuce. Fortunately, since he didn't see me, walk out of that stall, and there were many options. It could not be concluded that I must have been the culprit, but I admit I found it pretty hilarious that the least thing I heard while leaving the restroom was an exclamation of, "Oh, what the fuck?" from a stranger. I hope my giant blue turd didn't cause that poor man permanent psychological damage. Next story. Used to work in a small office with 2 separate bathrooms, one on either side of our office space. Each was a tiny room with a toilet and a sink. There was a guy who, without fail, about an hour or 2 after lunch, would decimate one. Crime scene. Level mess, with the odor as well, and that odor would waft outward to the nearest cubicle residents, who complained daily. He never flushed, and his excuse was that he'd read how toilets create an aerosol effect when they're flushed, which sends a cloud of mist into the air, and he refused to endure that because Who knows who else used that toilet? Which meant someone else got the honor of being sprayed with his leavings. Boss told him he had two choices: flush and spray Lysol generously, which truly does little to abate the stench, or use the facilities somewhere else. I'm sorry to say he chose to go to the nearest fast food place instead. To those valiant McDonald's employees, I'm so sorry. You did not deserve that. I did this once because I had no choice. I had to be somewhere early for work that was 1.5 hours away. So I'm driving this whole time before sunrise, drinking coffee, a little nervous for this work thing, and now I have to shit bad. I find a random Denny's and run straight to the bathroom. There's only one stall. I lock the door and turn to find someone clogged the entire bowl with paper and ass gaskets. I proceed to push out this ridiculous soft serve mountain on top of the soggy paper platform, like a McDonald's ice cream cone, but shit. The entire pile is above water. I had to hover and wipe just to avoid touching it. I had no choice but to top it off with a blanket of shitty paper. By the time I'm done, the summit is a good 3 inches above seat level. I could push that flusher 100 times and the whole structure wouldn't budge. Absolutely shameful. If anyone here is a Denny's employee in Northridge, CA that had to deal with this, I'm sorry. Next story.
I had a customer years and years ago. She hated me and I never knew why. I was polite, eager to help, but not obnoxious. My boss theorized it was because I was a kid. Mind you, I was about 21 but looked around 15. I found out she worked as a cleaner for public toilets, and that included a local one. One day, I was serving her at the register, and she was paying cash. Instead of handing the money over like a decent human, she tossed it and waited for me to pick up the coins. I picked up the coins and smiled, asking if she was okay, and brushed it off as an accident. On my lunch break, she did it to the local cafe worker, a girl who was around my age. I asked around, and yeah, she did this to all the kids who served her. So, I did what any mature 21-year-old did. I worked in a pharmacy, bought some laxatives, and waited after my shift. I went to the local public toilet that I knew she cleaned and let out the biggest, wettest, most cramp-induced shit I had ever had. It hurt, and I swear I lost a few kilograms. I pulled out a Sharpie and wrote in the cubicle, "Treat us with respect, and you throw money, we throw shit," and so on. I did a stakeout. I was a distance away in a parking lot and waited. I ate some macas and waited. Around 7:38 Ching, she arrived in her glorious uniform and her trolley of goods. She went in and came out and choked. I laughed and watched. She was in there for close to an hour. The next time I served her, she was timid. She was scared. She did not throw money at me.